I just want to introduce our team. It's their time now, the Safe Parking, to do a presentation they've been working on. And so I think I'll just go ahead and do a share right now. So you can, we'll jump right in. Can you all see that? Let me move this so we can start from the beginning. Let's see, slideshow from beginning. All right, Tom, I just so appreciate this team, and I'm very excited about the hard work that they're doing. So Tom, it's your turn to move forward.
I'm Tom Petersmeyer. I'll introduce myself further in a few moments. San Gabriel Valley Safe Parking Committee has been meeting for the last 1.5 years. Our members represent all areas of the San Gabriel Valley. We thank you for attending tonight. Next. Okay, I'm going first. My name is Tom Petersmeyer. I was a corporate banker for 25 years, then a financial advisor, and then a nonprofit fundraiser. For the last 2.5 years, I've been intimately involved in the safe parking movement in the San Gabriel Valley. I was motivated to get involved in safe parking because a friend of ours has lived in her car for the last 3 years with her pet cat, just surviving night after night. I visited the San Diego Safe Parking Program and spent a night and a day with the staff of the one in Santa Barbara that is 16 years old and is considered to be the ultimate model for most safe parking programs in California as well as the rest of the country. I'm also familiar with Safe Parking LA, which has 7 sites and over 150 parking spaces. One site is for 50 veterans and another is for women only. I have a giant pet peeve that the San Gabriel Valley still has no safe parking program at this time.
And the next is Betty McWilliams, and that's me. I am the Executive Director of Foothill Unity Center, providing food, case management, health, housing and homeless, and job development services in 12 cities in the San Gabriel Valley. For 40 years, the center has been on the ground in the fight against poverty, hunger, homelessness, and acts as a lifeline for those struggling to survive. Today, with the pandemic, we are serving all of San Gabriel Valley and beyond. This year, we have already surpassed the number of services we provided all of 2019. 34% more families, with 37% new to us this year, 3 times the number of services, and close to double the food provided all of last year. Many of the people we serve live in cars, and we expect the number to increase significantly as this ongoing economic and health crisis continues. For me personally, it has been throughout my 30+ years in human services leadership roles, it's been rewarding to identify existing service gaps and to develop a way to fill them. A safe parking program is a missing piece of the solution of homelessness in San Gabriel Valley. And Foothill Unity Center is ready to help fill this service gap.
Hi, my name is Carol Daly. I'm one of the co-founders of Foothill's Kitchen in Monrovia, where we've been serving meals every Saturday for the past years out of the Methodist Church. We have served thousands of meals with volunteers coming from over 26 different churches. About a year after we started, we became aware of our neighbors in the nearby riverbed. Nearly everyone there is living under a bush or in their vehicle. We decided to do something about that. At first, volunteers were making up sandwiches to take over, but before long, we had 19 different teams all coming forward, paying out of their own pockets to make meals and serve them. When COVID hit, to make a long story short, Madre de la Rosa Retreat Center in Sierra Madre received a generous donation from the owner of Cacique Mexican Cheeses to feed the poor. Madre de la Rosa reached out to us and asked if they could help us. We said, heck yeah. With their help, we are presently feeding 120 to 150 people every day. I'm also a St. Vincent de Paul person called a Vincentian with the Immaculate Conception Conference, and I am a member of Monrovia Housing and Tenants Advocates seeking affordable housing in Monrovia. I am involved with this safe parking team, and I believe that safe parking is a viable solution to getting people off the street and into housing. Thank you.
So you've been hearing a lot from me tonight, but you may not know some things about me. I moved to Pasadena from Mexico in 1991 to work and learn from Dr. John Perkins, and helped start an after-school program at Lake Avenue Church. And it was there that I started to see kids drop out when they got to high school. They had to help work to pay rent or babysit, so the parents could keep their housing. So I learned about Agape Court. It's a faith-based affordable housing complex. They had openings. I moved families there. Parents were only paying a third of their income on rent. So they had time for their kids. And the kids, every one of them that moved in there ended up graduating from college. That led me to become an advocate for affordable housing as a tool to break that generational poverty cycle. And ended up writing a book called Making Housing a Community Happen, Faith-Based Affordable Housing Models. It's being used on campuses around the country. I ended up putting together a course for Azusa Pacific and their Master Social Work on housing justice. And I wanted just to close this with a story I heard last week from one of our key leaders in North Fair Oaks that witnessed across the street from his church 2 people living in their cars being arrested, and he had been ministering to these gentlemen, and their cars were towed away, which is the only home they knew. So that made me get even more passionate about this topic tonight. Thanks.
So Wendy McGrail could not be with us tonight here, and here's her bio. For over 40 years, Wendy has worked with Women, Infants, and Children program, better known as WIC, helping people on their journeys to improve their lives and themselves and their families has been a motivator for her throughout her entire career. Outside of her job, she is deeply involved in homeless ministry, Secretary of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, District President for the St. Vincent de Paul East San Gabriel region. She is on the steering committee of San Gabriel Valley Churches Assisting Neighborhoods Network and is founding member of the Temple City Homeless Coalition. She and her husband have lived in Arcadia for over 30 years. In the past 10 years, and especially most recently, Wendy has seen tremendous increase in the number of people in the neighborhood living on the streets, in encampments, and in cars. In addition to being her neighbors, many of them have become her friends. She became involved with safe parking over 2.5 years ago because she feels safe parking is a realistic solution.
Next slide. Next picture.
Oh.
What is Safe Parking Program? A safe parking program is a comprehensive intervention program that is the first step in taking people from the street in their vehicles towards housing. Confidential, safe, monitored, and an ongoing overnight parking spot for individuals and families living in their vehicles. It's an assigned place where they can return to every night, giving them stability of knowing that they have a place and they don't have to go searching for a restroom. A case manager is assigned to them to assist with life issues and connections to resources such as healthcare, food, employment, and housing. The goal of safe parking is to get people into housing. All participants must be committed to become housed. Next slide. Why is it needed? When you lose your housing, if you don't have someplace to go, then your vehicle becomes your home. More than you can imagine, people fall into homelessness through no fault of their own. Rents go up, spouses die. I had a call last week from a young couple that are living in their car because their home burnt down. Because of COVID, he hasn't been called back to work, and his wife is expecting a child. The next slide. Why is it needed? Often people do not have sufficient income to provide for their basic need of housing that they can afford. San Gabriel Valley has over 500 people living in their cars. And if you notice, that statistic was given in 2018. Can you imagine how high it's going to be after COVID? Most cities in San Gabriel Valley prohibit overnight parking on the street. So now you've lost your home and there's no place for you to park. People who sleep in their cars overnight are often harassed and fear being arrested or victimized. They often have no access to bathrooms or hygiene facilities. Try imagining getting a knock on your car window in the middle of the night telling you that you have to move or that you'll be ticketed. One guy recently told me that the police told him at 2 a.m., "You know, we can arrest you and take you in." The man replied, "Then do it. I'll at least be inside and safe." Next slide.
Tom, you need to unmute, Tom. Tom, you need to unmute.
Yeah. What are some examples of safe parking? Santa Barbara Safe Parking Program is an exemplary program started 16 years ago at the request of the city of Santa Barbara. That's important. It serves 150 parkers who are accommodated on 24 lots, both private and public. One of the lots is the Santa Barbara Mission. There have been no complaints from neighbors during this time, and they have helped house over 1,000 people. If you can see this, they publish a manual, 140 pages, how to do it, that I have a copy, several of us have a copy, but they are really the leaders in safe parking. Safe Parking LA in the city of Los Angeles operates 7 safe parking sites with 154 spaces, including 50 for veterans only and another small site for women only. There are 10 other safe parking programs in LA County with a total of 245 spaces, averaging 25 spaces each. I'll repeat, there's not one safe parking program in the San Gabriel Valley.
Well, working with many partners like Union Station and our friend Ann, who is our speaker tonight, we have placed 13 families into permanent housing since the pandemic started. Families like this couple, just needing a helping hand to navigate the challenges that have confronted them. It is hard to think about how to get out of your situation when finding a safe place to park and sleep day after day after day, and it becomes overwhelming. A successful safe parking plan will provide that support. Next. To have a successful program, you must have a site with a caring and committed host, a place where parkers feel welcomed and loved. Must provide for a minimum of 5 parkers, a good screening process, funding to support the site's needs, and all involved have expectations parkers will transition into housing. Next. The program manager provides management and administrative functions, and they obtain the needed funding for the program, and they screen the parkers and provide the parkers' case management. They work with the host in creating protocols and rules, and they execute all agreements with hosts and any service providers that are needed. Next. The essential role for the host site is to mainly provide the parking lot for a minimum of 5 parkers, meaning 10 or more spaces. And they must coordinate with program managers, creating rules and structure for the site. Because each site will be specific to what they can offer, here are some optional possibilities. Providing showers, bathrooms, some security or lot monitoring. It can also be an opportunity for church members to volunteer with meals, childcare, homework, help, art projects, whatever creativity. You can think out of the box. Next.
The steps to launch or set up a program are as follows. Program managers and church representatives meet for a presentation about safe parking and complete a safe parking lot evaluation / assessment form. Program managers and the church host develop a draft proposal and timeline. Program managers prepare a draft memorandum of understanding between the program coordinator, Foothill Unity Center, and the host church, for the church to present to its governing body. Finally, program managers schedule a meeting for all parties to sign the memorandum of understanding, and then we launch the program. Next. Next slide.
I'm having a hard time getting it to advance. I don't know what's happened. Oh, Lord. Okay. There we go. Go back. Okay. So, Tom, did you have anything else to say?
Well, it's a photo of the back of a van with looks like a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old sitting there staring at the camera.
You should have 2 more slides.
Not working. Yeah. Can you go back and then forward?
That was just finished the steps, and now it's that, and now
you want the photo. You can't.
I just looked at yeah.
We can't see the photo.
We've lost your screen.
Oh, you've lost me? Okay.
Is it possible for Betty to share her screen?
How do I do it? Resume share. So let's go back down there. There we go. Okay. I don't know what happened. Thanks for everybody for your patience. Great.
Okay, so homelessness means some kids sleep in cars. We invite you to help us house these families. How can you help? If you're interested in finding out more about hosting a site, the next slide, there is a next slide. We'll have all of our information on it. Go back. And if you are wanting to contribute, if you can go back, you can, for this committee, you can go to foothillunitycenter.org and you go to donate and designate safe parking, or you may text for HOPE to 41444 and designate safe parking, and it will go towards this program. Great. And the next slide has all of our information if anyone wants to contact any of us.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to stop this share, and I want to thank everyone for your attention during this time. And so if you have any questions, we're going to take a few minutes for those before we have Ann Minsky.
Jill?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I think there was a question in the chat just to explain about safe parking, that there's currently no formal programs in San Gabriel Valley. So they just had a question to elaborate on that.
Yeah. There are a number of pastors I know that informally have someone stay in their parking lots, but this is a well monitored path with everyone case managed to get into housing. with an end in sight, you know. And so as far as an actual formal program, there really is not any in all of San Gabriel Valley. There desperately needs one, or two, or 20, or 50. You know, every church should be thinking about how they can participate in this. So, other questions that you may have? Anybody?
Hi, Jill. This is Florencio.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation today. It was very informative. In regards to the statement about there being no safe overnight parking programs in the San Gabriel Valley, that is 100% correct. During the last RFP process for LAHSA funding for safe overnight parking programs, there were no applications submitted within SPA 3, within the San Gabriel Valley. So everyone here tonight, if you know anyone, whether it's a church or a property owner or business owner that has a property that could potentially be used for safe overnight parking, please put them in contact with LAHSA or even with our office, or if they're in another supervisorial district, with that supervisor's office, because we need to establish communication with them and get them prepped for the next RFP process. Of course, COVID has thrown a wrench into everything, including potential projects that were in the pipeline for sites like Lario Park. But we want to make sure that we have people, whether they're businesses or other property owners, that have the access to those properties, get them primed and ready for the next RFP process so that they're ready to go and there's technical support available to them from LAHSA staff to get them ready to submit their applications.
You want to put your contact information, Florencio, into the chat so people can reach out to you?
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to do that I saw there was a message from an individual here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll put my contact information. My colleague Ryan Serrano has already done so earlier in the meeting.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
I'll add mine as well. Anybody, if you have any questions, so that, please feel free to reach out. Supervisor Solis covers the southern part of the San Gabriel Valley, most everything excluding the foothills. But we do cover Irwindale and Azusa, as well as Claremont and Pomona. But the foothill areas are in Supervisor Barger's district. But of course, you're free to reach out to us and to ask for assistance, or to, talk to us on whatever topic you feel we can best help you with. But thank you for putting this together today. I do want to share one stat. I think it's important to share regarding COVID, and I know we haven't talked about it in this presentation, but Project Roomkey, which was an initiative started by Governor Newsom through an executive order earlier during COVID in April. It's a program that places individuals experiencing homelessness who are over 65 or who have underlying health conditions into hotel and motel rooms that have been leased by the County of Los Angeles. So right now, there are approximately, you have to forgive me, I'm looking for my notes, 3,900 rooms that are being leased by the county within the first district. Of those 3,900, there's 3,518 that are currently occupied by somebody. So that's about a 90% occupancy rate. The stat that I really want to highlight, though, is because individuals that are experiencing homelessness, we're working on getting them into these rooms and ensuring that if they do have underlying health conditions or they're over 65 and they're more susceptible to developing complications from COVID-19, the infection rate for individuals experiencing homelessness is actually 2.6% versus about 10% for the general public. So Project Roomkey has been doing a great job in getting folks housed and getting them into shelter now. And the most recent announcement by the governor's office is a transition to what is now Project Homekey, where some of those motel and hotel properties will be purchased by the state or local governments, including counties, in order to turn them into permanent supportive housing. So the governor has allocated $550 million for acquisition and/or construction. And there was a notice of funding availability released earlier this month on the 10th. So the County of Los Angeles CEO's office is preparing applications for some county facilities that may be part of that program. So there is motion, but there's always an outstanding need. So we need folks like you who are organized and who are involved to get people in contact with the county so that we can get them ready to go, so that when those RFPs open up, they submit their applications, they're ready to go, and we get the programs going. So thank you again for participating today, for inviting us to participate, for hosting this webinar today.
I'd like to just kind of make one comment. Yeah, when LAS's RFP went out, it was very difficult for an organization cost effectively to start a whole new safe parking program. So the requirements and what they were willing to pay for, you had to put in an awful lot on your own. So it was a little difficult for a number of agencies to participate on that. And then secondly, yes, I know Anne has done more than we have as far as Project Room Key, but we've placed 26 people in the Project Room Key. And now our problem and worry about is to get them housed, not back on the streets.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback, and that's something that we'll definitely take back to LASA. And somebody just pointed out, I'm just so accustomed to throwing out these acronyms. LASA is the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. So thank you, Brad, for pointing that out in the chat.
So Florencio, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I reiterate what Betty has just said. We did look at the LASA grant 2 years in a row, and it didn't fit for what we're trying to do. So if you're open to looking at some flexibility in your requirements and work with us, that would be awesome. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
Thank you.
And there was also a one question here about Pastor Kerwin in regard to FEMA trailers. And so it's a good question. I think that that's something that we'll be talking about next, but it's something that the city still has to decide what we can and can't do on properties and how they're going to use those trailers. We have 50 trailers sitting in the Rose Bowl unused. And so, the land use does not allow it. So it's going to take some organizing to get the city to allow us to use our properties, our church properties, for that.
I think there was a question about liability of the churches, whether they have to increase their insurance if they wanted to start safe parking on their church property, if there's any increased liability.
Betty,
that would be something that would be discussed when you sit down and talk about the site. It would be possibly shared, but for our program that we're talking about, Foothill Unity Center would have the bulk of the liability. But in general, churches have their own liability, and so hopefully, both of them are sufficient.
Good question.
Does that answer? Yeah.
Any other questions? Because we need to move on. Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions, you can also continue to ask questions in the chat area. So if there's no other questions, we're going to move on to introduction of Ann Miskey. And she is the Director of Union Station Homeless Services. And it's my pleasure to introduce her and to highlight some of the work that she's been involved in. Ann serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Union Station Homeless Services. She brings extensive knowledge to the issues involved in addressing homelessness, along with the exceptional leadership ability and management skills. She is a person of faith. She has a master's in divinity, University of Toronto, and was the former CEO of the Downtown Women's Center and is a nationally recognized expert on strategic innovation and effective solutions to ending homelessness. She is a passionate proponent of the most vulnerable in society and of creating long-term positive change and strong systems that support those experiencing poverty, violence, racism, and homelessness, and has been invited on numerous occasions to speak at the White House in support of different topics, including women and youth, homelessness, and worked with former First Lady Michelle Obama. She worked with the Joining Forces campaign to help veterans. Since 2016, Ann has been a significant force in the passage of Measure H and Proposition HHH, which approved millions of dollars to address the homelessness in the city and county of Los Angeles, and has made advocacy an important component in her work. We at Making Housing and Community Happen are grateful for the advocacy that she has done at Union Station. And we are grateful for her leadership. So we'd like to listen now to Ann Miskey.
Thank you so much, June, and thank you all. It's such an honor and a real privilege to be here tonight, and I love listening to everybody who went before and hearing about the amazing work that you're doing. You know, I often say to people that when I speak, they look at me and go, "You have a vested interest," because they know what I do. It's when community members get up and speak. It's when faith groups get up and speak and do more than speak, actually take action, that we can really move community. So again, it is such a privilege to be here tonight. I'm going to try to share my screen and see if I can get this going. There, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So some of the things I'll talk about tonight, you all may go, "Oh, no, that, been there, done that," because I know you guys have been working on a lot of these kinds of things. But really what I wanted to do tonight was talk about ending homelessness, but the continuum that we need to look at if we are going to really help people who are experiencing homelessness on the street. So at Union Station, our mission is to prevent and end homelessness by focusing on permanent solutions. And I have highlighted housing because that's really what we're talking about tonight. And you know, it took, I would say, the country about 50 years to figure out what ended homelessness. And it was a huge shock when they came up with all of the research and they said, guess what, folks, housing ends homelessness. It's as simple as that. But we, of course, recognize that a lot of the people who experience homelessness, I would say all of the people who experience homelessness, are dealing with all sorts of issues of trauma, poverty, racism, all of these kinds of things. So we believe, along with housing, we also need to really look at supportive services and then focus on things like employment and community engagement or connection. Because I think connection with other human beings is probably the most important thing we can do. But I know that tonight we're talking about housing. So again, we are about housing, that permanent housing ends homelessness for people. And when we talk about housing first, we're really looking at housing is the foundation for stability, for success, for thriving, and for hope. Again, permanent housing plus support. But I want to talk a little bit tonight about the continuum that leads towards ending homelessness. And these are all of the things, when we look at sort of what do we need to do to help people end their homelessness, these are the various things. And again, I've put in blue interim and permanent housing because that's really what I want to talk about tonight. But I think all of these others, you'll all agree, are essential pieces to getting people back into stability and thriving in community. So things like building trust and relationships, accessible services, emergency services, housing, and then all of the other things that surround the services around housing. Now, one thing I think it's really important to point out here is this is not a timeline continuum. In other words, if you're experiencing homelessness, you don't have to go through in a specific order. Really, when we work with people experiencing homelessness, the first thing we want to do is actually get them into housing. So that may be number one, and then we work with them around services. Or it could be that first we build trust with them. Or first, maybe they're saying, you know, no, I need to deal with my health first. So we get them connected with a primary care physician or whatever it may be. And we really listen to those people to say, what is it you need at this moment? But we do know that there are a lot of people right now in Los Angeles County, 68,000 on any given night. If we looked over the whole year, I'm sure they're well into to over 100,000 people experiencing homelessness in our county. And we don't have housing for all of them. And that's why we're here tonight. But what is so shocking is that we don't even have interim housing for people. So we're leaving people on the streets suffering because there's not enough housing. So I want to talk a little bit tonight about those interim solutions. They're not our final goal. Our final goal is to get people into permanent housing, and the faster we can do that, the better. But at the same time, we have to look at, well, what do we do when people are still on the street? So if we look at the history of homelessness, the solution, quote unquote, you can't see me, but I'm making little air quotes with my fingers, was really building bigger and bigger shelters. And there was no exit door. It was basically warehousing people. And that is not something we want to turn to, especially at this time of COVID or when the situation is getting so bad out there, that we sort of refocus and move back to shelters. And we're seeing that happen. We're seeing the federal government now push more of this. We're seeing, you know, agencies go back to the idea of temporary shelter. We don't want to start building huge warehouses where we put people and basically leave them. What we want is a pathway to permanent housing. So whatever we do, even if it's the emergency short solution, we want to make sure that it's directing people to housing. And I think we just heard that in the safe parking presentation, where it's that temporary solution, but they're really focused on getting people housed. So now I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the various temporary solutions. And again, we don't call things shelters anymore. Okay, that word is sort of that slide I showed you. We really talk about bridge or interim housing because it is a bridge to permanency. And I'm not going to go through the safe parking because you just had a great presentation on that. But one of the models that I'm actually really excited about is what we're calling the safe haven model. And it kind of fell out of favor for years, but it's coming back. And this is mainly working with faith groups. And this is for people who don't have cars. So it's similar to the safe parking model, but without cars. And really what it does is it allows faith organizations to allow people experiencing homelessness to use their properties generally overnight for sleeping. And we're working right now with All Saints Church on a wonderful model around safe haven. And what I love about what All Saints is doing, and I know other churches are doing this as well, but they talk about these people who are experiencing homelessness. They don't call them those homeless people, or they don't even say people experiencing homelessness. They call them members of our congregation. And they have opened their arms to these people who are able to stay on their property. And they're working with us to ensure there is service provision, there is security and safety, and that's for the people, not security against the people. In other words, they don't look at these people as a bunch of, you know, alcoholics and criminals and we have to protect our church from. They recognize these are very vulnerable people. So they have security, but they work directly with the folks who are living there. The people all sign a covenant. There's also sort of self-determination, and you know, they really work on saying, what do we want? How do we make this a safe place? The church is looking at getting some lockers for them. So they have a place during the day to store their stuff. They have a porta potty there. And again, the church has embraced this community, and they have a limited number of people. They're going to have IDs. So they work with them And this is a model we would really love to see expand through the community. And it doesn't require a lot of stuff. I think obviously trailers and shelters are much better, but in want of that, and if we don't have the funding for that, at least this provides a safe and dignified place for people to be safe. So if you're interested in starting small and not necessarily having a trailer on your property, this is something that I think you could consider. Now, of course, another model that most of us know is that congregate shelter, and I showed you that big picture. We have in Pasadena 2 shelters, and then we have the winter shelter, which faith groups have, that is just a temporary shelter. But the 2 permanent shelters are our adult center on Raymond and our family center, which is on Orange Grove. The problem with congregate shelters is very simple: COVID. You cannot have people in a room together. And we had about 60 people in our adult center, and they're all in hotels right now. Some went to the COVID PRK, the Project Room Key sites, because they were highly vulnerable. Others we put up at hotels on our own dime because it wasn't safe for them to stay. The health department has said we can let 18 people maximum back into our shelter during COVID times. That is all that we can bring back safely. That's true with our family shelter as well. So now we have all of these people that may be coming out of hotels who need a place to stay, and they cannot go back into our shelter. So we are extraordinarily worried about what is going to happen to all of the folks that are going to be exiting hotels. Again, if they're in the Project Room Key hotels, the county is working on the Project Home Key path. There are a lot of people that are in hotels simply because of the density in the shelters, but they're not considered quote unquote vulnerable. So that is an issue. So again, I mentioned motels, hotels. They're a very good solution. They're a very expensive solution. When we started putting people in hotels, the average cost was about $45 a night for a room. It's now about $100 a room because hotel owners are going bonus. And we've seen the prices go up and up and up. So that is something that we use, but we have to use very carefully because we just don't have the funding. It costs about $2,000 per person per month to put people in a motel or hotel. I think we spend something like $200,000 in Pasadena and San Gabriel Valley, something like $200,000 a month on hotels. The final one is, I think, and I'm a little biased, is our pallet shelters. Here's a picture of them, or the trailers, because these offer people safety. They can lock their doors, they can keep their things inside them, they can keep pets, they have privacy, which for a lot of people who have experienced a lot of trauma, it is a much safer and healthier and better place. So this is one of the things that we've really been looking at. And again, like safe parking, the issue is where can we put these? So we've been talking to folks in Pasadena, trying to find land and space where we can put these shelters or these pallets or these trailers. The pallets have electricity, they have air conditioning and heating. You can put a mini fridge in there, you can put a microwave, you can put a cooktop so people could actually prepare their own foods. What they don't have are bathrooms or showers. So we're also talking about how could we get that for people, and we think we could use the shower of hope to go around to places and then have porta potties. The trailers, I know there were a number of questions about the trailers. For some reason, I don't quite understand why. We keep getting told that they're outrageously expensive to operate. City of Los Angeles turned them down, didn't want to use the FEMA trailers, but I think it's something we should still pursue. The pallet shelters cost about $6,000 each, and they have a lifespan of 10 years. So that's basically 3 months in a motel, and we would pay for one of these. And again, they have a 10-year lifespan. One of the things we are looking at is creating pallet villages, which would have, plants, and people we could fix them up, get volunteers to help them, and then again, have 24-hour service provision and security on site. So those are some of the different models that we have right now of interim housing. Basically, we have congregate shelter, which practically closed down. motels and hotels, and a couple of models of safe haven in Pasadena. But we're dreadfully short of any kind of interim housing in the city. Sorry, next slide. Now I want to talk about permanent housing, which I know all of you know a lot about. But I just want to spend a few short minutes talking about different models. Somebody mentioned earlier about the Civic Center site, and that is going for hopefully final decision in August. What people may not know, and what I have heard through a few unnamed sources, is that the city is really wanting to focus more on high-end affordable rather than on housing for those experiencing homelessness. There is always a pushback on people experiencing homelessness, and so I think it would be incredibly sad if the Civic Center only went to high-end affordable. So in other words, it's what they call also workforce housing. It's for teachers, you know, firefighters, and not to say they don't need affordable housing. I'm not saying that at all, but we are so desperately in need of housing for those experiencing homelessness that the city needs to step up. So again, I think everybody knows supportive housing comes with supportive services, because you have people that have barriers, that have needs where they need support, but they're beautiful. This is an actual picture. If you haven't seen Marv's Place in Pasadena, the one on the left is Marv's Place. It's one of the nicest buildings in the neighborhood. We constantly have people knocking at the door asking if they can rent an apartment there, but it is supportive housing. Affordable, of course, does not come with services. You can have a voucher. It's lower rent, lower cost, but there are not services associated with it. Board and care, people may not realize, but we still have board and care, and board and care are really for people who have more severe disabilities or senior citizens who need really more intensive care and services. So we have a number of clients in board and care sites, and it's been extremely difficult during COVID because these are some of the places that have been hit really hard with COVID. But that is still one model that exists, and they started defunding that, the county, which there's been a lot of advocacy and pushback, because we absolutely need board and care, because there are people that just have such a high level of need. So that is one thing, if you ever hear about that, that is, we definitely need to continue with our board and care. And then these are two models that are not so common. One is shared housing. So this is an idea where you have a house, and maybe it's a 3-bedroom house, and you would really have 3 people sharing the house. They would have their own bedrooms and shared kitchens and bathrooms. This is a model that works for a few people, but it's generally not very desirable. And most people who have vouchers, and they have the service provision and the housing voucher together, don't want to go into shared housing because they want their own space. Where we found shared housing does work is often with women, and often with older senior women who are willing to do shared housing. But it is sort of one of the things we can put in our arsenal, but it's generally, when we have had housing, it can be hard to find clients who will actually use it, because once you get housing, then you're not eligible. So it's not like you could say, well, I'll go there for 6 months, and then when there's an apartment available, I'll move into that place. Because once you're in housing, you're no longer considered homeless, and therefore you can't just move to another place. So that's an issue with shared housing. But I know the city of Pasadena has been considering, they have purchased one that we're actually providing service for, and I think 3 women are going to go into there. So it is something to think about. And then this last one is one that I have not heard of in California. This was very popular on the East Coast and very popular in Canada, and it's generally to do with youth. So it's sort of the 16 to 24 years old, and it's basically almost like a foster care situation, but you actually don't get funding like you would a foster kid, but you would host a young person in your home and basically give them a start, a support system. There is some funding for it, but it's been very, very successful in other parts of the country, and I don't quite know why it's not popular here. We don't work specifically on youth homelessness, so I haven't been as familiar with that. But that is another model. And then, of course, the other one, and I know there's a committee that's looking at accessory dwelling units or tiny homes. And I don't know why we don't do more with mass producing tiny homes, because I think that's the way we need to be going. Especially you can make them with solar power and ADA accessible and all sorts of these things. So I think ADUs, but I would love to see us get some land and actually build a tiny home village, because they can be beautiful, energy efficient, safe, all of those things, and you can put a lot of people in them. So these are some models. So, you know, in the end, I think we all know what's going to take to end homelessness. And community engagement is the #1 thing that we all need to continue doing, reducing fears and connecting people. I love what Sonia is doing, and I know doing with us and everyone in, to start doing some next door Zoominars, which I think is great. Connecting people. The more we connect people with those experiencing homelessness or newly housed, the better off we're all going to be, because suddenly they're not those homeless people anymore. They're Mary and Juan and Sally, my friend. And that's what makes a difference. Understanding the causes and solutions. I think we've heard a lot recently about racism as being the underlying cause for homelessness. And we need to keep focusing on that. But we also need to focus on what the solutions are. Livable wage jobs, help with addiction and mental health, all of those things. But really the most important thing of all is absolutely, without a doubt, housing, because housing is what ends homelessness for people forever. And all of the other things won't make any difference if we're not getting housing for people. So again, thank you all for the work that you're doing, because that is what's going to make a difference. And there's one of our families who were living in their cars, and they now have a home of their own. He's going to college to become a teacher, and she is working part-time, and their kids are thriving. So thank you all.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that information was tremendously informative. And I know for me, it has boosted my inspiration to become more involved. And I hope that everyone else is deciding to make that commitment. And I really enjoyed the safe parking. Your presentation was exceptional. And I hope that we all can just be a part of these organizations, so that we can help those who have lost their homes, or there's so many people that we see, that we encounter day by day. So this was a excellent forum. I think now we have.
Were there some questions? Yeah, were there any questions for Ann Miskey? Anthony, are you there?
Yeah, there were some questions in the chat. There was a question about spaces like the PCC parking lot on Foothill and the Santa Anita racetrack and other sites. Has Union Station been looking at any sites for safe haven?
We have. We've been, the last couple of weeks, I've been scrounging everywhere and to anybody I can think of. If you have ideas, please send it to me. You know, unfortunately, I will say that where we get a lot of pushback is with the elected officials. And it's so sad to me, shocking to me, but it's like, oh, great idea, not in my district. And this is what we get. We do have a couple of sites that right now we are looking at. We tried the Rose full and we're told absolutely categorically no way, we don't want those homeless people by nice houses. But we do have a couple of ideas. So, but if you have any others, let me know. I don't want to say too much because some of the negotiations we're having to be kind of careful with, but hopefully we'll find something.
Yeah. Well, they suggested the Santa Anita and also.
That's a great one. I hadn't thought about the Santa Anita, so that's definitely one we'll check out.
And PCC parking lot. So it's really big. So are there any other questions, Anthony? I couldn't quite think of it.
Just, do you have any idea how many people would need housing in the fall and winter? Have you got any ballpark ideas? Because you can only house 18 at Union Station, and hotels are expensive. What do you anticipate to be the numbers that you're going to have to deal with this winter?
You know, it's really hard to tell because we're starting to see already people falling into homelessness because of COVID. So, I mean, if we took kind of COVID out of it and just people that were already experiencing homelessness.
You try and stay on your feet. Hold on to that until you get your feet next to the...
somebody's feet there. So, you know, we probably, it's probably 100 to 150 people, I would say. I expect more, but I'm just thinking if you look at our winter shelter and our 2 shelters and look at the people who can't go back in, that would be probably a low estimate. But
churches have a vital role to play, and I think in the breakout session, it'll give us a chance to talk that through. So I think that's what's next is the breakout session. Did you want to introduce that, June, or do you want me to go ahead and introduce that?
You can go ahead.
Yeah. So we've got a few announcements we want to make sure happen before we do that. So why don't you do that, June, and then I'll introduce the breakout groups.
The one announcement that I have is for the August 5th Union, on August 5th, Union Station Homeless Services and everyone in will be presenting a virtual neighborhood forum on homelessness in Pasadena called Who's Your Neighbor? If you or someone you know are interested in finding out more about our homeless crisis and what you can do in Pasadena and how you can help, we invite you to tune in from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. There will be presenters who are extremely knowledgeable with solutions and data for to give us help with understanding how to help people who are experiencing houselessness. The link to register for this forum will be in the chat box if you're interested. And I think there was another announcement about our upcoming poll. If you want to elaborate on that, Jill.
Okay, yeah, and then I think we were going to have Morgan share briefly. So we're kind of cutting into our breakout groups, but I still think it's important that we take at least 10 minutes and break out. So we're doing a poll for all the churches in Pasadena. So please anticipate if you didn't receive something today in the email to say it's coming this Thursday, then please put your contact information in the chat and we'll make sure you're on that list. It's very important that we can communicate to our city leaders the level of interest, both in trailers and in safe parking and permanent solutions of housing. So please make sure you pay attention to that. And in order to make sure we get a good response, we'll be having a gathering in June's backyard. For those that, how many have good handwriting and can actually admit that? Raise your hand if you think you have good handwriting. Because we want you, and even, you know, we're going to be addressing envelopes and writing little notes on envelopes to encourage a high response rate of people to do this survey. So we'll be announcing when that will take place, but it'd be very helpful to know if there's a few of you that would want to take an hour out of your day and hang out in June's backyard to make that happen. So please put your interest about that in chat. And so Morgan, did you want to just do a little screen share and tell us where you can get the different monthly forums like we have tonight, and tell about the one we did last month?
Yes, I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
So this has been recorded, and there's also notes from it, and each of the subcommittees reports that you can have access to each month.
Oh, did you want me to go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. So yeah, this is the homepage for our website, makinghousinghappen.org. So if you go to local advocacy, in the drop down you'll see MHCH local advocacy. Click there, and then you'll be able to scroll down and see all of our past meetings. For most of our meetings, we have the notes, video recording of the session, and the subcommittee reports, and any PowerPoint presentations that went along with that meeting. So you'll be able to see a lot of our meetings, even going back to the previous year. So we hope you take advantage of that. So thank you.
Yeah, the one we did last month was on racism and housing. So that was, we had a lot of interest. So that's something you might want to make sure you see.